Hi, welcome back. In today's class, we will discuss about environmental variables. We will discuss about the QTP environmental variables as well as the system environmental variables. Okay. Before we actually go and discuss the environmental variables, let's understand the necessity of environmental variables. Okay. What I'll be doing is I'll quickly create a variable named var1 and I'll assign a value to it. Let me tell it's QTP domain. Okay. So I'll create a function named variable. I'll name the function name as variable scope. Okay. I will declare a variable within a function. Okay. I'll declare this one as var2 and I'll say var2 equal to QTP training. Okay. I'll use a message box to print the value of var2 variable. Okay. I'll use the ampersand symbol and I'll call the variable. Okay. Now, if I call this function, just watch. So here I'll just print the value of the variable 1 as well. So if I run this script, I should get the message box for QTP domain as well as the message box that we wrote in the function. So QTP domain, this is the variable that we wrote outside the function. Okay. So I'm getting another message box saying that you are in function and the variable 2 value is QTP training. Okay. So okay, that's fine. So let me actually quickly copy this line and paste it outside the function. Okay. Maybe I'll paste it here. I'll write you are out of function. Okay. So let me run the script and see whether we are able to extract the value of variable declared within the function. Okay. So QTP domain is the value of the variable var1 which we wrote outside the function. So I'm getting the function is called and the message box that we wrote within the function. We are able to extract the value of variable 2. So you are out of function and I'm not getting any value to the variable 2 to this message box. Okay. So we were not able to extract the value of this variable that we wrote within the function. This is because variable 2 is local variable. It's local to the function. And the variable 1 that we declared over here is global variable to the action 1. So variable 1 is going to be the global variable to the action 1. Okay. So I can even call this variable 1 within the function as well. Okay. Something I can just say accessing var1 variable 1 from function. Okay. Let me run the script once again. So first I'll be getting the QTP domain. Okay. So the next I'll be calling the function and I'm able to get the value of variable 2 which is declared within the function. And I'm able to even access the variable 1 from the function which is QTP domain is the value of it. And variable 2 that we wrote within the function I'm not able to access outside the function. Okay. So variable 2 is local variable and the scope of this variable is only going to be within this function. So out of the function this variable 2 doesn't have any scope or value. But whereas variable 1 is global variable. It is global variable to this action. Okay. So now that we understood the difference between the global variable and local variable, so let's understand what if I have multiple actions in the test case. Let me insert an action. I'll name the action as action 2. Okay, I have the action over here. Two actions. Okay. If I try to access this variable 1 from another action, watch what happens. Okay. Let me run the script. Okay. First, the action 1 is running. Okay. Now see, I'm just getting a blank message box with no value. This is because variable 1 is only global to action 1. It cannot be accessed from another action within the same test case as well. Okay. So now what if you want to access the variables from multiple actions or test cases? What should be the solution to access the variables? Okay. In order to access the variables across multiple actions of different test cases, so we need to come to a different concept. Okay. Okay. So we need to discuss about a different concept that is called environment variables. So what is this environment variables? Okay. Let me comment out this line and let me comment this entire code that we wrote over here. Okay. Let's start discussing about the environment variables. Okay. Let's start with the QTP environmental variables. Later we'll discuss about system environmental variables as well. Okay. I'll quickly copy this line. Okay. So where can I actually add or access the environmental variables in QTP? That is going to be from file, settings, and environment. Okay. Let's do that. File, settings, go to the environment tab over here. To the right, I can see the variable type and I can see the built-in environmental variables. Okay. So all the variables over here are built-in environment variables. Okay. So there is another option called user define, which we'll be discussing shortly. So let's start with what is this built-in environment variables. Okay. Okay, let me close this. We'll start with discussing built-in environment variables. Okay. So built-in environmental variables are predefined variables. Predefined variables can only be accessed in read only. So you can only read the value of the built-in environment variables. You cannot write any value to it. Okay. Let me go to file, settings, environment. So I have all these built-in environment variables over here. Okay. Let me say I want to get the action name. So it is saying valid only during the test run. Okay. Action iteration valid only during the test run. So these variables are dynamic in nature. Okay. So these variables are dynamic in nature and will have value only when we run the test case during test run. Okay. So what we will do is we will save the test case and we'll start running the test case. Okay. I'll quickly name this thing as environment variables. Okay. Okay. So what we'll be doing is we'll call few actions in it. We'll call out few environmental variables. Let me call action name. So the name of the environmental variable is action name. Okay. So in order for me to call environmental variables, I will be using environment. Okay. I'll be using environment dot value. I'll be using the method called value. The name I have to provide is action name. Okay. Action name is the built-in QTP environmental variable. Let me use message box to get the value of it. Okay. Let me run the test case. So once I run the test case, I'm getting the value at dynamically at runtime. So the value of my action name is action 1. Since I'm running this test case from action 1, I was able to get the value name as action 1. Okay. In the same way, I can access any variable in the built-in environmental variables. Let me say I want to read the group name. Okay. I'll say message box environment dot value. I'll call out the environmental variable name group name. Okay. Let me run the script. Action 1, and I currently don't have any value in my group name because I'm not on any group. Let me take a different variable. Okay. Okay. Let me take operating system. Let me take the operating system version that I'm currently using, OS version. Okay. So it currently has this value. Okay. Let me run this test case with variable name as OS version. Okay. Okay. Now let me run the test case and check whether I'm able to get the value. Okay. I'm able to get the value of my operating system version. Okay. So these things can be accessed from any action. These environmental variables are not action dependent. They are global to any action and any test case. Okay. Now let me run the test case. I should expect to see 4 message boxes. This one and this one we are calling from the action 1. Okay. So here the action name got changed, guys, because we are in action 2. Okay. And we should be able to even get the OS version as well. So the environmental variables are global to any action and any test case. Okay. So these environmental variables can be accessed from any action and any test case. Okay. So can we write any value to it? Let me say I want to write a value to it. Let me say I want to just say instead of operating system version, I'll say Windows 7 SP1. I'll just give some name. Okay. Let me run the test case and see whether I will be able to update the variable value. So I got a error message, runtime error, saying OS version is built-in or external environmental variable. You cannot modify its value. So guys, the built-in environmental variables are only read-only. Okay. So we will not be able to write any value to it. Cannot change the value of built-in environmental variables. Okay. Okay. Now, so what is the advantage of this built-in environmental variable, guys? Let's say I have a requirement saying to find where is my test case located. I want to find the path of my test case. Okay. So what you can do, you can quickly write. I'll comment out this line. This is because we will not be able to change the value of built-in environmental variables. Okay. Let me say I want to get the value of my test directory, which is nothing but the directory where my test case is saved. So currently my test case is saved in this path. So once I run the test case, I should get this value. Okay, this is action 1 operating system version. So look at this. I'm getting the directory of my test case. Okay. So this is the action 2 environmental variables that we are accessing. So what I'll do is, since we don't need this currently, I'll comment this out. Let me go to the action 1. So in this way, guys, so we'll be able to know what is the action name, what is the test case directory, and what is the test case name. We will be able to find from the built-in environment variables. Go to file settings, environment tab, and over here you have the built-in environment variables. Okay. For accessing the test name, the variable name is test name, the name of the test. Okay. So now that we are clear with the built-in environment variables, so what are these? User defined. As the name itself says, so you will be able to define your own environment variable. So how to define this? The simplest way is to click on the plus symbol over here. It is asking to add new environment parameter. I will say NV1 is the environmental variable name, and the value is, I just set some value as variable 1. Okay. I set the value as variable 1. Okay. The variable name is env underscore 1, and the variable has the value variable 1. Okay. Let me apply this. Let me click OK. Let me comment out these lines. We don't need this. Okay. So I want to read about the user defined environment variables. Let me create some space for this. Okay. So for me, in order to read the variable env underscore 1, what I'll be doing is I'll say environment dot value. So what is the variable name? env underscore 1. Okay. I'll quickly give this thing to the message box. Let me run this test case now. Okay. I'm able to get the value of the variable that we declared in the user defined section. Okay. So I have a question here. So we use the same thing, right? Environment.value, and we get a variable name that is in the built-in section, as well as environment.value. We give the variable name that is in user defined section. How will QTP know whether this is an environmental built-in environmental variable or user defined? So what happens in the backend is when you run your test case and say environment.value with your environmental name, variable name, first QTP starts looking for the variable in the built-in section. So if QTP is not able to find the variable in the built-in section, so it goes to the user defined section and it checks whether if there is a variable matching with this name. So if it finds a match, then it will check if it has any value. Currently we give the value over here, so it just throws a value saying variable 1. Okay. So first QTP will start looking in the built-in section. Later it will check in the user defined section. Okay. So always remember, guys, the built-in environmental variables and the user defined environmental variables have to be different. Let's say I have OS over here. I cannot create a user defined variable with the same name. Let me edit it. So I cannot say OS. Okay. 1 second. Let me delete it. Let me add a variable saying OS. Okay. I cannot add a variable with the same name as built-in environment variable. Look at over here. The parameter with this name already exists as built-in environment parameter. Please enter another name because this variable is already present in built-in environment variables. Okay. So I'll just quickly change it back to env_1. Now I don't allocate. Right now I'll just remove the value. I don't put any value over here. Okay. I'll save the changes. So if I run the test case now, I should be seeing a blank message box since we don't have any value. Okay. Okay. Now let's go to the action which we are working on currently. I don't need this action 2 anymore. I'll quickly delete this action. Okay. So what if I want to allocate a value to the environmental variable from here? Yes, you can change the value of your environmental variable in the user defined section. Okay. I can quickly allocate any value. I can say QTP domain. Okay. I'll quickly call this message box line below this line once again. Okay. Okay. Let me run the script. What we did over here is we changed the value of the user defined environmental variable env_1 to QTP domain. Okay. Let me run the script. Initially, it should be a blank message box. Okay. Next, I should be getting QTP domain. Okay. So we were able to successfully change the value of your user defined environment variable. Okay. What if you want to clear the value of it? So you wrote a value to it. I was able to write the value to it. I was able to write value, or I was able to change the value to user defined environment variables. Okay. So what if I want to remove the value? Or what if I want to clear the value? What I can do is I can quickly say environment dot value, give the variable name env_1, and I can say set this value to nothing. Okay. So what we did, we set the value of the user defined environment variable to nothing. So we clear the value. I can say I removed or clear the value. Okay. What I can do is I will quickly call the message box just below this line once again. Okay. Let me run the script now. So I'm getting a blank message box because currently my environmental variable doesn't have any value. In the next line, we set the value to QTP domain. Okay. Later, the QTP object doesn't support this property. Okay. It's saying the object doesn't support this property. This is because we are saying value equal to nothing. Okay. I think I can do in this way. I can quickly say environment env_1. Okay. I need not tell dot value. Okay. Let me run the script now. Blank domain doesn't support this property. So something. Okay, I think I should not be using the set keyword over here. Okay. Okay. I should not be using the set keyword. So that is for releasing the memory associated with the object, not with the variable. Okay. Object variable not set. Okay. This is because we have removed the value or cleared the value of the user defined environmental variable using this line. Okay. To set the variable, just provide the value. To remove the value of the variable, just say equal to nothing. Okay. Okay. Now that I'm able to I'm able to add a value or remove the value of the user defined environmental variable. Can I create an environmental variable? Instead of going and creating the variable from here, can I create the environmental variable from outside? So currently for me, in order to create an environmental variable in user defined section, I'm just clicking on the plus symbol over here. I'm just saying env1 and env2. Okay. Can I create the variable from outside this dialog box from this test settings? Yes, we can do that. So those variables are called external environmental variables. If you can look at over here, guys, the type says internal. This means the variables are declared within the test settings. Okay. Let me apply it and let me click OK. So now we will be discussing how to use the external environment variables. Create some space for this section. Okay. So what are these external environmental variables? So I should be able to create these variables outside the QTP. Okay. So what we'll be doing is we'll quickly write an XML file first. Okay. I'll write down the template. Okay. I'm just opening the tag and closing the environment tag. So we want to declare a variable. Okay. I'll say I'm closing the variable tag as well. So the name that we want to give to the environmental variable is, and let me close the name tag as well. Okay. The name that I'll be giving to the environmental variable would be, let's say, I'll say env underscore 3. Okay. And the value that I'll be setting to this thing is, okay. If you have any questions on XML and if you are not clear about the XML, please refer to the W3 schools. Okay. So in the XML, you should be having a closing tag and as well as opening tag as well as closing tag. Okay. The value I'll be setting is variable 3. I can say external variable. Okay. External variable. Okay. Now what I can do is I can quickly save this thing. I'll quickly save this thing to. I'll save this thing as environment external environmental file. Okay. Dot XML. So since this is going to be an XML file, so what I can do say is dot XML and I can save this. Okay. Now that we created an XML file with the specified template and we created a variable name env underscore 3. So what I can do is I can quickly load this thing to the QTP. How to load it? I can say environment dot. So there is an option over here, load from file. So it's asking for the file name. Okay, let me quickly provide the file name. Quickly copy the file path to the clipboard. Since I'm using Notepad++, I have this option. Okay, so this is the path where my XML file is saved. Okay, now that I loaded the environmental variable, what I can do is I can start accessing it. Dot value, and I can say the environmental variable that we created is env underscore 3. Okay, I can say env underscore 3. I quickly cover it to the message box. Okay, I'll quickly comment the previous code that we wrote for the user defined variables. Okay, so we expect to see external variable. Okay, so I was able to load the external file. I was able to load the external file using this command. Okay, so what if you want to add one more variable? The same syntax. Just copy this tags and just paste it below it, and you can take any variable. I'll say environmental 4 is my variable. I'll say environmental variable 4. Okay. Now I can quickly call the newly created environmental variable as well. Okay. Now let me run the test case. External variable 4. Isn't this simple, guys? So we were able to create a couple of environmental variables which are of type external. Since we haven't declared these variables from QTP, we have created the variables in an XML file and we loaded this XML file to QTP using environment.load file. Okay. So what if you want to skip the writing the XML file? Can you get the XML template from somewhere? Yes, you can do that. Go to File, Settings, Environment, go to the variable type as user defined. Okay. So what you can do is, if you want to know the XML template, what you can do is, you can quickly click on export. What it will do is, it will export this environmental variables to an XML file. Okay. Export the user defined environmental variables to an XML file. Okay. Let me click on export. I'll save this thing. I'll save this name as internal environment variables. Okay. The file extension .xml. Okay. Let me click OK. Let me go to the file path and just open the file. So look at here. env1 and env2 are the internal environmental variables that we created in QTP. Okay. File, settings, environment, user defined. So this env1 and env2 that we see in the XML file are user defined internal environmental variables that we created within QTP. We were able to export them to an XML file using this export option. Okay. Now that I have this XML template, I can start adding the things over here. Okay. So what I can do is I can quickly add one more variable over here. I can say internal environmental variable something 1. And I can assign some value to it. Okay. In this way, we can write an XML file for the external environmental variables. Or the people who are not familiar with XML, they can export the XML file and they can modify this XML file to create external environmental variables. So is there a user interface to load the file? So currently what we did was we created the XML file and we loaded the XML file using environment.load from file. So we can do the same thing from the user interface as well. Navigate to File Settings, the Environment tab, go to the variable type user defined. You have an option here. Load the variables and the values from the external file. I'll click on that, asking me to enter the file name. I'll quickly browse for my file. My file name is external variables file. Okay, I'll open it. It's asking me to remember the relative path. I'll say yes. Okay. Now look at here. I was able to load the external environmental variables. Okay. I was able to load this external environmental variables. And look at the type over here. The variables that were created outside the QTP are shown as the type external, and the variables that we created within the QTP using this dialog box, we are getting the type as internal. Okay. Okay. Let me quickly apply. Click OK. We know how to load the environmental file using the programmatical approach or using the user interface approach. Let me do one thing. I'll say environment dot external file name. What is this external file name? Let's say if you want to know whether the environmental file is loaded or not, what to know? I'm not sure whether this environmental file is loaded or not. Currently, we know that we loaded this environmental file, but you are not sure whether this file is loaded or not. Okay, I uncheck this checkbox. Okay, currently we haven't loaded any environmental file which has our external environmental variables. Okay, you are not sure whether the environmental file is loaded or not. What you can do is you can simply say set. No need to use set. You can say file name equal to environment.external file name. You can check if file name, the file name is blank, if it is empty, then it means no file is loaded. So if this is going to be empty, you can say no file is loaded. How can we load the file when the file is not loaded? We already discussed this approach. Okay, using this line environment dot load from file. We need to give the file path. Okay, I'll quickly copy the file path, cover it here. Okay, so what we are doing here, guys, we are just checking whether the external file is loaded or not. If this is not loaded, then we are loading it. Okay, let me run the script. Okay, okay. So it will not be reflecting in the dialog box, guys, because we loaded the file, but it will not reflect over there. But you can access the variables in the file. So let's say this file has a variable env_4. I can access this variable over here. Okay, I'll quickly use the message box. Okay, let me run the script. So I'm able to get the environmental variable value. Okay, which is declared in my external file. This file that we loaded will not be reflected in the test settings. Okay, although it is loaded, it will not be reflecting over here. It will be loaded in runtime. We have loaded this environmental file in the runtime. Okay, okay. So this is about the QTP environmental variable, guys. So we discussed what are QTP built-in environmental variables and what are QTP user-defined environmental variables. Within user-defined, we discussed what are internal environmental variables and external environmental variables. Okay. Let me comment out this code. We'll go to the next section. So the next thing in our agenda is to discuss about the system environmental variables. So what is the system environmental variables? Okay. Currently what we are doing here is we are only accessing the variables that the QTP provides. Whether we provide QTP or whether the QTP is inbuilt. So these are the environmental variable names that are built in. So what if you want to access the system environmental variables? So what are the system environmental variables and where can we know it? Okay. What you can do is, one thing is you can right click on your computer, go to the properties. Okay. Within the properties, go to the advanced system settings. Here you can look for the environment variables. Okay. Once you click on that, so you can, this dialog box opens up for you. The user variables for the Windows profile. My Windows profile name is Srikanth, and the system variables. So what if you want to access these variables from QTP? Let me do one thing. Let me check how to access this else service. So this variable holds my licensing server path, QTP licensing server path. Okay. Let me check if I will be able to access this variable. Environment dot value, and I'll provide the variable name. Okay. I'll use message box to read the variable value. Let me see if I will be able to read the value or not. It says environmental parameter was not found. Confirm the environmental parameter with this name is defined or specify another environmental variable. Okay, we got a runtime error. So it is saying this variable is not defined. I know this variable is defined here, but I'm not able to access the system environmental variables. Okay. So what it means is QTP only provides access to the inbuilt or user defined environmental variables. You cannot access the system environmental variables using the environment method. Okay. Using this method, you cannot access the system environmental variables. So I'll quickly show you how to access the system environmental variables as well. Okay. Let me create some space. Okay. These are the system environmental variables. Okay. How to access these variables from QTP? What if I want to know my licensing server path? Okay. So what we can do is we can use the Windows shell script. Windows script host. Okay. What is this Windows script host? Okay. I'll quickly give an introduction of what is this Windows script host. Okay. Currently Windows supports three script hosts. Okay. Three script host programs. Okay. For the client side scripts, we can use the program that is supported by Windows is Internet Explorer. Okay. So if you want to run the server side scripts, so you can be using IIS, Internet Information Server. Okay. So the third host program that the Windows supports is Windows Script Host. So it supports both command prompt as well as Windows scripts. Okay. So we need to discuss about this Windows script host in order to access the system environmental variables. Okay. So I would suggest you to read the internet for more information on this Windows script host. Okay. But you can find these two programs. Where can we find this Windows script host program, guys? If you go to your drive, okay, if you go to your Windows folder in your operating system, go to System 32. Okay, over here you can always find this WScript.exe and CScript.exe. Okay, CScript.exe. So these two are the programs that Windows has it to support this Windows script host. Okay. So it is WScript.exe and CScript.exe. One program is used to run the Windows script programs and the other program is used to run the command line script program. Okay. Let's not spend more time on this thing. Okay. Let's get back to the topic. how to read the system environment variables. Okay. In order for me to read the system environmental variables, I said I need to access the host program Windows script host. Okay. What I'll be doing is I'll be creating a COM object. Okay. I'll say obj Windows script host. I'll create a COM object. And the class value for this COM object is going to be WScript.Shell. Okay. So what I can do is I can say dot environment. So I have a method accessible to the object environment. Okay. So it's asking for me what type of environmental variables do you want to access. Okay. Whether do you want to access the user environmental variables or the system environmental variables. Let me tell I want to access the type is user environment variables. Okay. First of all, let me set this thing to, I'll set it to a Windows script host user environment. Okay. I'll quickly set this thing to this variable or object. Okay. So let me quickly find the count. I'll assign this to the message box. So I want to find the count of user defined environment variables. What are the user defined environmental variables? So let me manually count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 6 user defined environmental variables or user variables for my profile Srikanth. Okay. Let me run the script and find whether I will be able to get the count so that I can make sure I was able to access these variables. Okay, I was able to get the right count. Okay, okay, this line we have to comment it out. Okay, I was able to get the right count. Okay, so now I got the right count. How can I access the values of it? Let me say I want to access the value of this variable. Okay, I want to access the value of this variable. Before I go ahead and, okay, let me access the value. For me, in order to access the value, I'll be saying give the variable name. Okay, I'll quickly assign this to the message box. Okay, now I should get the value of the variable. Okay, sorry, I need to provide the variable name over here. I need to provide the variable name here. Okay, so for me, in order to get this user variable as service, which is nothing but our location of our service for our QTP license. Okay, let me run the script whether I'll be able to. 6 is the count of my user environmental variables. Okay, great. I was able to get the path. Okay, I was able to get the path of it. Okay. So in this way, I will be able to read the user variables for my profile. Okay. I'll be able to read all these 6 variables. Okay. Let me try to read a different variable. Let me read the temp variable. Okay. Let me run the script one more time. 6. Okay. I was able to get the location of my temp directory. Okay. Okay. So in this way, I will be able to access the user variables for my profile. Okay. What if I want to access the variables for my system? What if I want to know my path variable? I want to know the value of my path variable. How to know it? So what we need to do is we need to say we are looking for the system variables. I quickly need to say instead of user, I need to say, let me quickly mark this as user variables for Windows user. Okay. Let me quickly copy this and paste it over here. And let me tell Let me create some space for this. I'll quickly say system environment variables. Okay. Over here, what I can say is instead of user, I'll say system. Okay. So let me say I want to get the variable value for the variable name path. Okay. I'll tell over here. Let me even find the count of the system environmental variables. Okay. Let me make sure that the previous code is commented. Now let me run this script now. We expect to see the count of system environment variables. Okay. I have 31 system environmental variables over here. Okay. The total of 31 system environment variables. Okay. So the value of my path variable is this. Okay. So I was able to read the value of my path variable. So in this way, I will be able to read anything. Like let me say, I want to read the username. Okay. Username is the variable that I want to read. What I can say is, I can say username. Let me run the script. 31 and the username is system. Okay. So I was able to read the variables as well. So in this way, I'll be able to read the variables, user variables for my Windows profile and the system variables. Okay. So what if I want to change the value? So what if I want to change the value of a variable? Let me say I want to change the value of my system, the user variable over here. Before I change the value, what I'll do is I'll quickly copy this variable value somewhere over here. Okay. Okay. Now that I have my original value over here, now we can go ahead and change the value. Okay. For me, in order to change the value, what I'll be doing is, so we want to change the value of, let me quickly comment this code. Okay. I'll copy the previous code, change the value of system variable. Okay. I'll quickly paste the code. I'll uncomment this code. Okay. So I just want to change the value of the variable, this one. Okay. For me, in order to change, what I'll be doing is, I'll quickly say this variable new path set from QTP. Okay. I'm changing the value of this variable to this. Okay. So if once I call this variable, I should be getting this new value. Okay. Let me run the script now. So I should be getting the count of my user defined variables, which is 6, and I should be getting my new value that I set for my user variable. Okay. Okay. We were able to change the value. It's simple. Just set the value equal to set the new value. Okay. So let me go to the system properties and look if the value is changed or not. Okay, the value seems to be not changed. Let me quickly click on this. Okay, great. So the value was changed. Okay. So we were able to edit or change the value of the variable as well. Unlike the built-in environmental variables, we were able to change the value here. Let me quickly copy the original value that has to be for this variable. Let me click OK. So I don't want to mess with my computer. In this way, we'll be able to change the value of either user variable or system variable. Okay. If you want to change the value for your system variable, just provide here system. Okay. Okay. Let me comment this code as well. So how did we do this thing, guys? We just created a COM object for Windows script host. using the create object, and we provided the class value as WScript.Shell. This is the class value. Okay, and we use the method dot environment. Okay, so I can look what if I want to get the value of the variable which I don't know whether it is residing in user or system. Let me say I want to get the value of my com path. This is the value of my variable that I want to get. Okay, so I'm not sure whether this variable is currently in the system variables section or user variables section. So I'm not sure of this thing. Okay. Okay. So let me see. Is there a way that I can read the value without knowing in which section it is present, whether the user or system? Okay. What you can do is you can say dot expand environment. Sorry. There is another method called expand environment settings strings. So over here, what you can do is you can quickly provide the path within this percentage symbol. Okay. Let me print the value to the message box. Okay. So once I run the script, without knowing where this variable is, whether this variable is in user defined section or system variable section, I should be getting the path of it. So the path is currently something Lenovo communications. Okay. Let me run the script. Okay, great. Lenovo communication security. So I was able to read the path of the variable, but I know the name of the path variable, but I don't know where this variable is currently in. Okay. If you are not sure of the variable, whether this thing is in user variables or system variables, you can use this method called expand environment strings and just provide the variable name within the percentage symbol. Okay. So using this way, we will be able to access or manipulate the system environmental variables. Okay. So in today's class, we discussed QTP environmental variables. So we discussed both built-in as well as user defined. Okay. And within the user defined, what we did, we discussed what are internal environmental variables and external environmental variables. Okay. And we quickly discussed even the XML file, how to write the external environmental variables. So whereas coming to the system environmental variables, we quickly learned what is this Windows script host. So we learned how to create object for the class WScript.Shell. Okay. We learned how to access or manipulate user or system environment variables. Okay. Okay. So that's it guys for today's class. We'll continue in the next series. Okay. Thank you.